All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday. It's time for Master Motivation. My name is Jason Flame, and today my guest is Mr. Robert Adelman, who is the owner of Way of Orient Martial Arts in Ventura, California. He has over 30 years of martial arts experience and has more than 20 years of teaching experience. Robert started training at the age of 5 in Tang Soo Do under Grand Master Mark Cox in Tang Soo Do. In 1997, Robert continued training in the arts of Taekwondo and Hapkido under Master Kirby Harvey, Master Russell Seveney, and Grand Master Jong Yi. In 2016, Robert became a certified Krav Maga instructor under Master Mark Cox and is also working towards his second degree black belt in Krav Maga currently. Robert holds a fifth degree black belt in Taekwondo and a fifth degree black belt in Hapkido. Robert is a proud father of his two wonderful children, ages 7 and 10, and is also married to his high school sweetheart who have been together for 22 years. What's up, Robbie?
What's up, man? How you doing, dude? Hey, thanks for
I'm
having me on, Jason. I was real excited when I got the opportunity to be on. So, yeah, man,
Yeah,
excited.
well, scheduling worked out because we had you scheduled for a little bit later, and then
Right.
opportunity popped up. We had someone move to this coming Wednesday, so we're all good. Here we are. We got you on a little bit
Cool.
earlier,
Cool.
and I'm
Awesome.
happy to have you. It's fun to interview all the tremendous leaders that I have had the pleasure of training with and just knowing in my life. But it's also really cool to be able to interview a good friend and someone that I know has a great story. So let's dive into it. And for those of you that are watching, guys, if you have any questions or you just want to say hey, drop those comments below, and we'd love to hear from you guys. So, Robbie, do me a favor and just
Sure.
kind of aside from the bio, right?
Yeah.
Talk a
Right.
little bit about your background, kind of growing up, where you're from, and we'll go from
Yeah.
there.
All right. So, I was born in Northridge, California, and we lived in Chatsworth. So, I had a very young mom when she had me. She was 16 years old. And so so I had really young parents at the time. So I spent most of the time in the San Fernando Valley until 1994. And that's where we got relocated due to the Northridge earthquake, and I've been down in Ventura for most of my life after that.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I kind of going back to having young parents. I got started in martial arts when I was 5 years old under Master Mark Cox, and stayed with him for a very long time. Even after the Northridge earthquake, when we relocated, I tried to train for like a year and a half after that. Just my parents couldn't do it anymore because they only had one car. The income was real low, and of course things were a lot harder. So I can't tell you how many schools I trained out here, down in Ventura County, Oxnard, Camarillo, and a lot of them were not my fit. I trained at some of these really hardcore traditional karate studios. I have one. I almost don't want to mention the name, but I was the only kid there, and I literally remember being like in a horse stance, or we call it a sitting stance, and hitting wood, and I promised to God on this for about an hour. And when you're 9, 10, that's not fun. You're all by yourself. The owner of the school just kind of comes in and just tells you to hit harder, and then he goes right back in his office, and you're by yourself in a dark studio hitting wood. And I'm like, yeah, the place was cool, especially if you're adults. But again, not for a kid.
Hmm.
So I trained out all these other schools, a few Kempo schools, a lot of these other Taekwondo schools, and I found a school that I appreciated, and I've actually been with them ever since. But yeah, so yeah, kind of going back to my family, having young parents was a blessing, because I had a mom and a dad that were literally just my age, like 15, 16 years ago. So if I was ever getting into trouble, there was a few steps ahead. And if I was trying to sneak or hide or do something I shouldn't be doing, they were real quick to catching me and saying, "Hey,
Hmm.
what's going on?" And luckily I had amazing parents, and I had an amazing childhood, and I'm real blessed. And it's funny that I tell my kids this, is that I grew up without the iPhones and the iPads and whatnot, and playing outside until the street lights turned on, and that was your cue to come back home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right around I was 18, 19, I mean, cell phones were becoming real big, and yeah. So I mean, again, I kind of had the opportunity to be outside. I was very physical as a kid. Played a lot of sports. Played football.
Mm-hmm.
For
Let's
4 or 5 years
let's
of my life. Oh yeah.
let's pause there for a second before we talk, because I do want to get into talking about the sports that you did, because I know you were an
Sure.
athlete as well, with
Yeah.
martial arts. But going back to talking about growing up with young parents. I mean, I had my parents were probably 19 and 20, so still young, and that dynamic is very different. Having younger parents than some of our friends that maybe didn't, their parents were 25, almost 30.
Right.
What was that
Yeah.
like? What was your relationship? How was it different than other people that you knew, and what was going on in your life as you were younger, as you were coming up?
Well, going back to my parents never treated me as a friend, and I'm blessed for that. My mom was always, I'm your mom. She never tried to play the friend card that sometimes you might hear parents say, which I absolutely don't agree with. Um, but having young parents, of course, I don't want to say that they made bad choices. They made immature choices at certain times. A funny story is that I tell a lot of people, when I was maybe 6 months, 6 months years old, or 9 months, my mom used to put Pepsi in a bottle, shake it, have the carbonation spray out, and give it to me. So I was, drinking Pepsi or Mountain Dew, and those small things like that. And it wasn't all the time. Of course, I got the good nutrition and whatnot, but y- y- it was just interesting having, again, young parents, because even if I was hanging out with my friends, or I was with my mom or dad, everyone confused us as brother or sister, or my dad was my older brother, my mom was my older sister, and
Mm,
everyone having like little crushes on my mom, because they were like 15 years old. I mean, sometimes even 12 years old, age difference from my mom. So that was always real annoying, and whatnot. But it was nice because I had young parents that were able to play with me, and to throw a football, to practice karate with me,
hmm.
play video games. It was really cool having young parents, but I only can imagine now being almost 37.
Sorry, guys, got a little lag. Robbie, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but it's pausing on your
Oh,
end.
no worries, no
There,
worries.
there you go. We
Yeah,
got you
yeah.
back. Cool, cool.
Cool.
Sorry that we missed that last part, but one of the
That's all
questions
right.
that I sent you, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and by the way, guys, if you're watching live, we got several people watching here right now. Any questions that you have for Robbie, anything you want to say, anything at all, just throw those in the comments so we know that you're there. But one of the questions was, what were things that you struggled with as a child that may have carried into your adult life?
Um, Great question. And it's one of those where, when I was, go back to me living in the San Fernando Valley, I was a real skinny, I don't want to say skinny, skinny. I was a skinny, athletic, fit kid. And then after the Northridge earthquake happened, again, we got relocated. For whatever reason, when I moved to Ventura, I got asthma, or, became asthmatic. And then I also started just having problems breathing, allergies and whatnot. And then it was so bad where I started being put on medication. So like right around fifth grade, I started taking prednisone per the doctor's orders, and maybe not playing outside as often, because the valley where I used to live with, I used to play all the time outside, and I didn't have a lot of friends in the neighborhood when I moved, but I gained a lot of weight. Prednisone will also make you bloated, heavy, and so I was bullied a lot about my weight, which is funny now because I appreciate that now. But my fifth grade, end of fourth grade, fifth grade, and sixth grade years were horrible.
Mm,
So I became a class clown. I tried to make people laugh instead of them laughing at me. I'd try to laugh with people.
hmm.
Probably got in a little bit more trouble at those ages, but again, it was nothing serious. It would be more, me cracking jokes, or playing a little prank on the teachers and whatnot. And I just try to make people my friend.
Hmm.
But yeah, and there were times where as a kid, again, it's funny now because it made me the person who I am today. But like girls are like pretend, oh, so and so has a crush on you, and here I am in fifth grade, a little heavy set kid, believing that some girl has a crush on me, and then 3 days later, all the girls are like, I'm just joking, ha ha ha, and you're just crushed as a kid. You're like, oh man, or even taking a field trip. I remember this one time I was trying to put on a wetsuit in fifth grade going to Catalina, and I just couldn't fit into the normal kid size wetsuits. And all these girls just laughing, and I'm just like, man, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, knowing how that stuff feels is great because of what I do for a living now. So, I didn't become a martial artist because, I want to beat up all the, the bullies in my life, or never got in law enforcement because, this reason or that reason. It was more just I wanted to always help people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So I think weight has always been an issue with me. So if you remember, gosh, even 6 months ago, 9 months ago, 10 months ago, I was a lot heavier too. I was actually real skinny, and then COVID hit. They shut down my business. I was barely able to teach at certain parks here and there just to kind of keep some money flowing for my family. But I don't want to say I got into a depression then, but I guess it was a lot easier to stay home, eat, take care of my kids, help teach my kids when they're going to school online, and yeah, it was just real bad. But now here I am, training again, going to the gym often, eating right, and whatnot. It's just something again that I really wanted to do and change. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have to say the weight issues have always been an issue with me, but
Yeah, and what I like is how you brought up the fact that what you do now is help kids feel better about themselves by teaching them martial arts and giving them confidence in the things that you do with that. Real quick shout out to Jay Walker. Jay is watching on an
what's up,
amazing
Jay?
trip, by the
I
way.
know,
So
dude.
keep posting those pictures, letting us know what you're doing. And Jackie's
Driving
watching too.
camels and
So
such.
she just wanted to say hi. So hello, and
Hey,
let me know if
Jackie.
you guys
Nice seeing you.
have any questions. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
so growing up, being picked on, being bullied, gives you kind of that firsthand knowledge of what we talk about in our classes all the
All the
time.
time.
And
Yep,
so,
exactly.
so it's great that it's a nice turn of events that you get to be able to take your experience, even though it may have been a negative one, but turn it into a positive one to help other people now. And we started talking a little bit about playing sports.
Yeah.
Talk about getting into high school, and you played some sports. Talk about
Yes.
the sports you played and your experience with that.
So I started playing sports, I think, too, after I moved to Ventura when I was in fourth, fifth grade, and I always liked contact sports. I don't know why. Thank God I do. But again, the martial arts schools out here were horrible. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. They were all McDojos, and it was at a point where I started at this one martial arts school. I promise I'm going to get to my sports in a minute. But I was only at this school for, I don't know, 3 months, and I went to a tournament, took all these first place medals. It was a Taekwondo tournament, and where they wanted to send me to, what was it, Disney World. And it was like $10,000 for all this. It was like the Junior Olympics, almost got a chance, but my parents didn't have the money. So, I couldn't hold on to that anymore. It was a decent school, but it just, they couldn't afford it. So they started looking at other options, and they're like, hey, what about football? I'm like, yeah, football sounds cool. I always like to, I was always thinking about those guys in high school, right? Those big old jocks wearing their jerseys with the cheerleaders. I'm like, okay, I'm totally in for that. Totally, you know, uh, down to try something new. And so, fourth grade, I started playing tackle football. I enjoyed it. Always played lineman or linebacker. Sorry, that's my daughter coming in. But yeah, lineman, linebacker, or even a fullback. So fourth grade, I did it. Fifth grade, I did it. And then right around that time, though, it's funny, I found the school that I currently own now. Well, and we'll get there in a moment. But I started focusing a little bit more on karate, and then when I got to high school, I started playing football. My freshman year and my 10th grade year. So
Hmm.
I didn't stick with it 11th and 12th grade because I got into wrestling and really enjoyed that as more. So, but
So
yeah,
talk about how your experience in football. How would you translate your experience in football and or wrestling, and how the martial arts tied in? What were some of the similarities, and what were the things that you felt were totally different?
right. So similar in nature where, if you're in a good class in a martial arts, school, you're training hard, you're sweating, you're getting your butt kicked kind of, you know, we were always told that, never quit, to keep fighting back, keep, so, continue to hold your head up. And, during especially high school, we used to do these 2-a-days. And I know exactly what I'm talking about. You wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to the weight room, and then you're playing ball for, I don't know, 2-3 hours. You have like 3 hours of a break during summer, and then you go back to practice for another 2, 3, 4 hours. But I remember, I'm like, man, this is hard. But see, I was always told and raised, you can't quit, can never give up. And so yeah, that was actually a great thing, because what martial arts has put into my life, I wasn't one of those kids that just quit. I kept pushing. Same thing with wrestling. I think wrestling practices were always harder than the matches. Doing sprints, and in Ventura, if you guys are my friends from high school are on, we used to do these things called Catalinas. If you guys know what Catalina Street is, it's near Ventura High School, and this is gigantic street that's, I don't know, maybe 2 football fields up, but you're running these big old hills and coming right back, and you're just doing this nonstop. Just almost making you just want to puke, It wasn't called Hell Week. It would be like Hell Weeks, for 3-4 weeks nonstop, getting your butt kicked. But again, it was a lot of that had to do with not quitting, or, not giving up, just keep pushing it, even if you're tired, even if you're walking, you're crawling, you're going.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would have to say a lot of those similarities. But then, of course, football I didn't really enjoy later on, because I found wrestling, and I'm like, I like more individual sports, instead of me worrying about this dude that, that's going to affect me in the game, or whatnot. So I always like wrestling, or martial arts, or grappling, jujitsu, you name it. So I always kind of found out that I'm more of an individual type of person. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that I mean, I love both of those sports. My son has played both sports, as well as baseball. We came up. My middle brother, I don't know if you knew this. My middle brother played baseball like his whole life, but we all did martial arts. He continued to play baseball. Me and my youngest brother, we stuck with martial arts whole life. I never really played sports. I tried out for the football team, made the football team, made stupid decisions, kind of just walked away. More or less, I think I talked myself into thinking it was because I was going to focus more on martial arts. I'm not sure if that was exactly what it was. But I also wrestled in high school for about 3 minutes. And I grew up loving pro wrestling, thinking that was the same thing. And couldn't have been more wrong. But I always said, when I had kids, I wanted them to be involved in team sports and team activities, because, martial arts, I think the one thing, at least, within my school, and I think we have a similar culture, is that there's very much a team and family atmosphere within the martial arts school, but it's based on your individual skills and talent. You don't earn your belt because of what everybody else does, right? But having those people behind you, gives you a little boost. I mean, just you and I having tested together, we have that.
Absolutely.
We push each other a little bit. Mr. Cox is watching. What's up, Mr. Cox? He said, "Water is for the weak." He loved how weak when he was young. Yeah,
kids don't believe that this day and age. I mean, now, I always give my students water, but yeah, no, I remember, if you're screwing up in practice, you're not drinking water. It was the norm.
Totally different mentality, and we can go on a huge tangent with that on this podcast. But getting back to talking about the sports, I have loved watching my son play football and wrestle as he goes into his senior year of high school, and whatever he decides to do next, he has a lot of options. But you have a son. Are you encouraging him to play team sports as well as martial arts? Or I know that he's very talented in martial arts. He's a tough little kid. He's I've watched him compete many times. He's a competitor for sure. But what about the other aspects? Are you encouraging him to do those, and what sports does he like to play?
Yeah. So, okay. We kind of now talking about my son, who I love to death, and I love my family. But when he was a little dude, 2, 3, I'd give him some weapons and practice, played Michelangelo nunchucks, and, have him kind of play with karate. Didn't make it a big deal. Ever try to make karate a big deal. But when he was about 4 or 5, we signed him up for T-ball. Just have him try it.
Right.
This is probably the only time where he didn't like it. And again, he's 4 and 5, so he didn't understand about quitting and whatnot. But he was literally sitting on the field picking grass. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, hit the ball, and he just wasn't into it. When he was about 6, 7, we signed him up for flag football. He played and finished that entire season, but he didn't like football. And maybe things change. I don't know. Later on, he grew up, got taller, and my wife's like, yeah, let's get our kids into swimming lessons. I'm like, that's awesome, because I suck at swimming. I'm a sinker. I mean, I can swim, but swimming's not my strong suit at all. So he started doing swimming, at maybe 5 years old, doing private lessons and whatnot at like the YMCA or the local park over here. And then he enjoyed it. He loved swimming. He was good at it. And so I'm like, you know what? One of the hardest sports, and I know for a fact today, not saying football's not hard, but wrestling is water polo. If you ever watch those guys play, man, I mean, they're kicking each other's butts, or even
treading water for an hour.
Right. Yeah. So we put him into water polo, and he ends up enjoying it because, my wife and I want him to have a team sport he can take through high school and be decent at, and, God forbid, if he's blessed enough to get a scholarship for college, cool, great. But so he's been doing water polo for a while now. And then also he's really into basketball. See, basketball for me, I was more of a defensive player of, doing rebounds, but I can't shoot for exactly. Yeah, right. I'm not.
We're short, dude.
The tallest in the world. Right, exactly, dude. So, Skylar's got the height. So, and he enjoys basketball. He enjoys water polo, and those are his sports. And then karate and jujitsu, martial arts. I don't want to say it's a life sentence. It's a lifestyle for him now, and he understands that. And so it's really cool.
Well, it's interesting that you talked about how you didn't force him into it. I learned something through both of my kids. I made Madison do martial arts, and she went to her second degree black belt. But the way that I approached it, it was constantly because I wanted it probably. Well, I know that I wanted it more for her, more for me than for her. But then when Mason started training, I was like, I know he's going to be around it his whole life, and I didn't push it as much. And it's one of the things I still hold a little bit of hope that Maddie will get back on the mat at some point. Although she could probably just destroy someone with her words more than with her fists. But you know her, right? But Mason, just the approach that I took is what I'm getting at. The approach of how I kind of forced it down her throat and kind of probably pushed her away from it a little bit, whereas I kind of just let it sit there a little bit and didn't really push it, and he gravitated toward it a little bit more. And I don't know, I really don't think that was a boy-girl situation. I just think it was the method that I pushed it down their throat. But I want to get to this comment real quick. Rich Haggerty's watching, and he says that he's seen how you talk to the kids during the kid and the teen classes, and it's just amazing how you can send a positive message to the kids of all ages. And, all the adults are listening as well. So thanks, Rich, for watching and hanging out with us. And Mr. Cox is talking about basketball. Yeah. When I played basketball,
that's exactly what it was.
I liked definitely the physical part. We all gravitated towards this more physical, self-defense, Krav Maga, karate, jujitsu, those combat arts, I don't, it's just in my personality that was now. I don't think it was when I was a kid. When you were a kid, were you as aggressive? Because you're super aggressive on the mat. I've watched you, turn that switch on. Were you that aggressive always as a kid?
To be honest, as a kid, it had to do with, and I even say that, I try to always hold myself in, but I always have this thing where I can just kind of let my mind just, I don't want to say snap. That's probably one of the worst words, but even as a kid, I would just remember if I get focused and I don't want to say I'm angry. I mean, I don't even know the words to describe it, but if I'm, ready to go, I always had this time to fight mentality in my mind where I don't want, again, is it snapping? I don't know. It's almost like I almost see a tunnel vision, but where I'm just in it, 100%. But I think as a kid, I was learning how to do that. When I was 18, 19, 20, I was really good at just snapping immediately if I needed to. And now I'm very good at controlling it. So, I'm not like a little fire plug. I'm very calm and relaxed and
Mm-hmm.
until I need to. I'm kind of like, the Krav mentality. Everything's going well until, you know, it's fan and, it's time to go. It could be just like right now, you and I talking, and then someone goes to our, one of our businesses or the door. It's time to fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've always kind of been like that, but it's gotten better over the years. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny. Mr. Cox just posted. He commented, "Of course,"
exactly.
because he's Chatsworth, and it's funny because as I'm thinking, you grew up in Chatsworth at Chatsworth
Yes.
Karate. I don't think as a younger martial artist, I didn't have that. I had a cocky attitude, um, but I wasn't. I'll be honest. I don't think that I was really tough. I don't think that I was tough. Maybe I thought I was, but I don't. I really wasn't until I started sparring a lot more. And truthfully, it was getting that Chatsworth mentality because it's
Right.
just it's all in the way that you train, right? I think it was in the way that we trained. And the way
Yep.
that I
Yep.
trained before that was probably not so much that, not good, not bad, not positive, not negative, just the ability to be able to turn that on. And we talked about your son a little bit, and now we're talking about being
Sure.
able to turn that switch on. Let's talk about your daughter for a second, because your daughter also does
Man.
martial arts, and I just think about that because, like, we just have that mentality that if anybody messes with our daughter, like, you don't even need a switch. You just go. Talk a
Right.
little bit about your
Yeah.
daughter.
So yeah, my daughter's 7, and just turned 7 early September here. But she is very, very kind, of course, very smart, but also she is more like me than especially in the last few years. I noticed that she's very much like me, especially like mind wise. Again, very smart, but she's going to be small like me. I can see Skylar being more tall like mom,
Mm-hmm.
but she's becoming very athletic. She's enjoying gymnastics. The
Mm-hmm.
way we got Brittany to do karate, and it was not a force. It was, I always had this idea of, and I listened to the Gracies talk many, many years ago before kids, of playing, making martial arts about play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think watching her brother do it, and then other kids, boys and girls on the mat, Brittany was like, I want to do this too.
Mm-hmm.
So, we do these little, I'm holding a pad drill, or, I'm in the house, like, all right, hey, kick my hand. And, she's doing these big kicks, and, I'm like, all right, now go, ah, yeah, and so I try to always make it fun. And then she is now really excited when she goes to martial arts, both my
Mm-hmm.
kids, which I'm blessed. I think my daughter can be just as talented as Skylar. And I'm seeing it now. But again, she's only 7, but she's an orange belt, and the orange belt is the same as American Tang Soo Do right now. So I'm not in a rush to promote her too fast, but make sure that she's enjoying it. She's doing, like I said, gymnastics. She's also
Mm-hmm.
doing a little bit of splash ball, which is water polo, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just trying to keep her busy. But I pray that she's going to be a real tough girl if she needs to be, because
Yeah.
God forbid I'm not there, her brother's not there, mom's not there. I want her to smash someone's face if they ever try to hurt her, especially some boy, or whoever.
Maddie's
That's
Maddie's
the
first lesson in martial arts was always, I would ask her the question at 2 years old: if someone bothers you or someone tries to hurt you, where do you kick them?
exactly right.
her
My
answer
daughter's
was
good at that.
her answer was always very funny when she was little, when she said that. But you brought up a good point. You talked about making karate or any activity. Kids learn a lot from play,
Right.
and sometimes we lose sight of that. I mean, the game is what makes it fun, and what stimulates their mind and their brain to work. One of my past guests,
Yes.
Melody Johnson, is really good with her
Oh yeah.
skills program,
Yeah. He's great.
who talks a
Yeah.
lot about the psychology of that. And I just think that that's so important to remember it too, because I mean, at the end of the day, there's got to be a good balance of fun and learning, and what they need to do.
Yeah. Or they're not going to want to do it. Period.
So
So
Enric's watching. Enric
Henrik,
said, "Hey
new
Robert,
ball.
glad to catch you up on YouTube. YouTube channel here. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend and instructor. What a fantastic journey for me and both of his kids. Enric, I think, is probably one of your highest ranks and one of your go-to guys in your school.
He is. He's
What are
testing for
his
his third degree black
responsibilities?
belt. I'm sorry, Enric's responsibilities.
Hmm.
So Enric, again, he's about to test for his third degree black belt. The long story with Enric, and I'm always picking his brain. The guy's, first of all, one of the kindest people you can meet. Like you said, we're good friends. We go to each other's houses. Our kids, luckily,
Hmm.
get along and whatnot. But Enric is, if I could say the instructor below me would be Mr. Duval, Enric. And so Mr. Duval's he has an extensive background of martial arts. And if I mispronounce this, my apologies, Mr. Duval, but, Kali Eskrima, it was almost on the tip of my tongue. In France, he was training Salat. And so I'm always constantly picking his brains. And I don't, if you've ever seen me, Jason, well, you have, obviously, if I'm getting thrown or tossed around, I know how to fall and move.
Hmm.
But when Enric's doing some of these things, it's amazing what he can do to someone's center line. And it sounds silly. So, if we're doing like a one step or a flow drill, Enric knows how to literally kind of, just gently throw you off balance, make you fall to a point where you can't even catch yourself to land. So you can't do a side fall. You can't roll out. It's like your body is literally twisted.
Hmm.
And he's just full of knowledge.
Yeah.
And he almost has a similar story to me, where out of all these years of training, for whatever reason, he never earned his black belt. So, but no, Mr. Duval's been with me for, gosh, 6-7 years.
Yeah.
Our little boys used to go to Three Angels daycare. He's phenomenal. I'm very blessed to have Mr. Duval at our studio. He also is one to make it grow. And I also have Yana Zernova. She's one of our other instructors, a female instructor, which is great because we need female instructors
Hmm.
for the Taekwondo Hapkido side. So, but yeah,
Well, I knew that he was someone that was close to you and someone that you had a lot of respect for, and
very
you do
much.
talk about him, and I've seen him perform in Krav as well. So he's a great guy to have around. It's always awesome to have yourself surrounded by these great people to help elevate your training. I mean, it's what makes me
So true.
so proud to have you and Brandon and uh, you
Yes,
know
Brandon, especially.
Nathan
Yes,
Carlin and John
yes, yes.
Vaverka, and of course, everybody in our AKMF organization.
I
You know,
love our
that's
HMF
that's what
organization
brings
for that.
us
Yes,
up is those people. Because without that, I know what it's like to be a lone wolf. I know what it's like to be part of an organization, and I appreciate and not just for me, but like you said, for your instructors. Like, I love having John be surrounded by all the guys and Mason and my new
right,
instructors that are coming up, because that's only going to elevate not just our own schools and their individual skills, but it's going to bring the organization ultimately to the next level, which I think is cool, because that's how we can grow and that's how we could potentially expand. So
right.
it's great,
No,
great to
exactly.
great to talk
Yeah,
about those guys as well. Couple
for
other
sure.
questions that I sent to
Yes.
you. And before we talked about your daughter, we talked about your son.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
real quick talk about your wife. You guys have been together
Yeah,
since high school. Not many
crazy.
people can say that.
No,
You probably know that Jackie and I met in high school as well. So um, we are. That's kind of all we know at this point of our life, right? Where we're
right.
probably surrounded by people that dated a little bit more, or waited till they were a little older to get
Sure.
married. But so just brag about your wife a little bit
Oh, yeah,
and
for
talk about.
sure. So again, long story short, in a nutshell, I end up meeting my wife when I was training at Way of Orient Martial Arts, the school that we're currently in. I was
Mhm.
about 12 years old. She was 11 years old. And, you know, I was a purple belt. Of course, I started off white belt at every school. But so I'm only about 6 months in, maybe 9 months in, and I'm going to go spar this one girl. She's a black belt. And I'm guilty. I just had these eyes. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. And she's a black belt. And I've always been trained and told, not to hit women, and so I went real gentle on her, but she ended up kind of kicking my butt. But I'm like, man, this girl's pretty, and I always waited to see her in class, and I didn't really talk to her, because I'm shy. I was a little heavy set at the time, and I'm 11 years old. I'm a kid, so years go by. I think maybe I stopped training there, and I'm in high school. I'm playing football, and I end up ditching football practice because I get bummed out about one of the coach's decisions not to keep me first string because some other kid comes in. I don't know, whatever. God works in mysterious ways, and this is, I totally believe in this. So I end up ditching, and I'm skateboarding home, and this one girl or two girls start whistling. And I'm like, I stop my skateboard. I turn around. I'm like, who are they whistling at? Not me, right? Because who's going to whistle at me? And so sure enough, I'm almost about to hop back on my skateboard and go, hey. I turn around and these two girls, I don't know, 100 feet away. I'm like, yeah, are you talking to me? And they're like, yes. And so I'm like, oh, shoot. Now my heart starts pumping. I'm like, what do these girls want? Or, I had no idea. So I end up skateboarding over there, and I see this one beautiful girl as soon as and that's what drew me to skateboard back to these girls. I saw this one beautiful blonde haired girl, and I recognized this other girl. And, again, it was Jenna, of course, at the time. And Jenna was with one of her friends that I actually was very kind and nice to in about 7th grade, a little heavy set girl. But luckily I was kinder. And it's kind of funny because I always tell my son the same thing, and I'm going to say it, if I get any slack on it, it is what it is. But even ugly girls have pretty friends. And, my dad even said that, and girls talk, right? So luckily I was real nice to this one girl. And she's like, oh, do you know who Robbie is? And, he's real nice and blah, blah, blah. And I'm, Jenna's like looking at me, I'm looking at her, and we just start talking for like 2-3 hours. And later on, it's getting late now. It's probably 5-6 o'clock. And my parents have no idea where I'm at, even though I'm like 5-6 blocks away, skateboarding home. And I said, Mom, I'm going to marry this girl. I said, this girl's beautiful. I'm just starstruck, right? And again, it's funny because I still don't know that Jenna was this one girl that we used to spar when we were kids. So, we met up a few times, and then we were like, hey, you look really familiar, and, Jenna's saying the same thing. And she's like, yeah, what do you like to do? And we started talking about hobbies, and I'm like, I like martial arts. She's like, you like martial arts? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like what I do. She's like, oh, I've been doing martial arts since I was a kid. I'm like, where at? She's like, Way of Orient. I'm like, Way of Orient? I'm like, when'd you go? I'm like, you're that girl. She's like, oh, you look familiar too. You used to be the boy that could do the splits. I'm like, oh, of course, everyone knows it's me doing the splits, right? Whatever. It made her remember me, so whatever. But
so pause real quick.
Yeah.
Pause real quick.
Yeah.
So Jenna got her black belt before you did.
Yes, and that's a pretty awesome story too. But
why did I not know that? I would use this every day, all day on you.
Oh, dude, yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
It had to do with the constant start and never be able to. I mean, especially with Mr. Cox, and that's a very heart-filled story that I'm very glad I was able to accomplish. But I got to my 2nd grade with Mr. Cox. Northridge earthquake hit. We couldn't train anymore, and then I turned up white belt and got a certain rank, and then that school sucked at the time, or and then I went somewhere else, white belt again, white belt, and then even kung fu. I mean, you name it, I trained in it. I didn't like it. Mm-hmm. But Jenna started martial arts when she was about 5 years old and stayed with it. So when she was about 10, 11, 6 years of training, she tested for black belt. So and actually, just so everyone knows, in December 3rd, is it 3rd or the 10th? I should know this. My son will be testing for his 1st degree. My wife will be testing for her 2nd degree.
Nice.
Which I'm really proud of, because I told my wife, I'm like, hey, honey, come on, you got to get back into the thing.
Right. Right.
And I know I'm almost jumping up to the future now, but so I'm real excited that she actually hopped on board now and is going to start getting ready for testing.
So you guys have been married 22 years, right?
Okay, we've been together 22 years.
You've been together 22 years. Yeah, you couldn't be. Okay, that would have been married at 15, right? Okay, so but together for 22 years. what do you think makes it work, and how are you guys able to work together? Because you obviously, she helps you run the martial arts school. So what do you
For
think
sure.
makes it work?
It kind of going back to us falling in love and whatnot. We had all these friends in high school, and we always noticed that when people break up, it'd be because she said, he said, she said type of ordeals, and friends would get involved and ruin relationships because they were trying to take the other one.
Hmm.
And I know you've seen that, I've seen it. And so we would kind of just, hey, let's talk, let's not get friends involved. And so we've always been really big on communicating, um, and not believing anyone, if anyone, rumors start and whatnot. So, but we've always had that mentality. We've always been very close. We've worked together. I used to work at the Ventura Police Department with her, and she sat like two chairs over. And it's funny because a lot of people didn't even know we were together or even married. They didn't even think that Adelman, what an awkward last name. We had Adelman here, Adelman here. A lot of people didn't even know we were married because we can keep our relationship very professional. I wasn't like, hey, honey. And,
Hmm.
we've always been really good at, working together.
Hmm.
We're an amazing team, especially if, we're doing something together. Uh, you name it, we're very strong. Communication is huge. There's times where not all relationships are perfect, obviously, and there's times where I gotta find out, am I, what kind of mistakes am I making as a husband, as a father. And I know that she does things at time, and I'm a male, she's a female, we are different. She's got her things that she likes, enjoys doing. I have my things that I enjoy doing. As we've gotten older and mature, the trust is a lot better. Again, being married 22 years, um, there's always work to be done in the relationship. And always, everyone's always heard the grass isn't greener on the other side. And it's like, well, the grass is only green when someone's watering it. So I always want to try to be there for my wife. And if anything ever started happening, and this goes to any relationship, if you're mistreating a spouse, um, there's issues here and there. I know this is easier said than done. You need to stop for a minute, take care of it, or someone else is going to step in and do it for you. And it's it's just one of those things. And I enjoy my time with my wife. I wish we always had more time. There's times where we're always with our kids, which we love our kids. I never think of it as me watching my kids, but just spending time with my family. But we try to do date nights as often as possible, but again, it's easier said than done. I'm working a full-time job at the studio. I do little private lessons here and there. I'm also,
Hmm.
a PE teacher now, carpooling, driving my kids everywhere. I mean, and she's doing the same, she's working her
Right.
butt off. But yeah, it's one of those things where we got to remember who we are, and, we got to be there for each other and whatnot. And yeah, so
So one of the
it's
questions
pretty
that
amazing.
comes up pretty often, and actually Rick Rando reminded me this for the last couple interviews. Talking about working with your spouse, um, maintaining your relationship with your spouse, being a father to two kids, having a business, now
Right.
having a job as a PE teacher. What do you do that helps you balance your time as best as possible, or what do you do in order to make sure that one area doesn't get too neglected?
Right. It's all about balance, and the best way said. You always got to have me time. You got to have personal time. So some of the things that I do now is I'm really big on going to the gym, and we're doing Krav training. I try to at least make my round in Chatsworth once, if twice a week. Great, even better. I know you and I have met a few times, but training and working out is very important because releasing so much stress and whatnot. You feel the energy is there. Um, and in a nutshell, you really got to take good care of yourself, your body, your mind.
Hmm.
You got to be careful of what you're putting into your body. Uh, so as I've really changed, a lot of my eating habits, no or very low sugar, the working out, it gives me more energy to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, when I look at, me running my business or me teaching PE, luckily I enjoy doing this. So it's not like, oh man, I have to go to work or I have to go teach. Because if you start doing that, you're going to be drained real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, it's all in balance. I mean, and luckily I'm blessed to have some really good instructors at my school to help me out. Sometimes I'll have my wife help me out here and there. For example, when we were doing the pre-test one for our black belt, my wife was teaching all those classes there. Yeah, and it kind of goes back to me and her working really well together, teamwork. Just like today, I took Brittany to her dentist appointment the other day. My wife did, but we try to help each other as best as we can to get things
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and sometimes you're not going to make everyone happy. If I'm committed to one thing and I can't help with someone else, it is what it is. But I try to
Mm-hmm.
be there for almost everyone, which is again hard to do. But
It is
yeah,
hard to do.
it's
It is hard to do. And my friend Kevin Kowalczyk, we just talked about this on another episode of a podcast, and we're talking
yeah,
about balance, but also being able to somewhat counterbalance, right? Because
right,
eh, I don't think that we're ever in complete balance.
never,
It's like someone walking on a tightrope. You're always kind of adjusting, always adjusting a little bit. So, but the thing that you said, I think, is key, and it resonates with me because I make sure that I make my workouts a major, major priority in my everyday life. If I'm not training, and like I just like to go to the gym, even if I don't get the hardest workout, it's a going to the gym when I may not want to, being in that environment of everybody around me, working and pushing and training, but like clearing my
right,
mind. It's the first thing. I refuse to take any phone calls before my workout. I don't usually set any appointments before my workout. My workout is my number one because I know if I get a good workout, I'm going to have a better day. Like you said, it helps you have that energy level, and what you're putting in your body makes a
correct,
huge difference, right? If you're eating right and you're working out, that energy is going to be there and you're going to be able to continue on. Otherwise, everything starts to just break down, and then everything gets affected. I know that my
everything
family
falls
can
apart.
feel
Yep,
when I'm not mentally right because I haven't been
right,
trained. I didn't get that that little shot of energy that I need. So, and
absolutely,
right before we had our interview today, that was my time. And it's important to have our own time for ourselves. And then you said date nights. I think date nights are
gotta
super
have them.
important. I love
Got to date your
I
wife
love
still.
dating my wife. It's
Got
like
to.
the best thing. And then
It's
I love
right,
family nights, family dinners. We
right.
still,
Yes,
push to have, Sunday night dinners when the kids aren't working. Now that my kids are at the age where we're dealing with their work schedule, it's really different. But that time,
sure,
one-on-one time with your son, one-on-one time with your daughter, just that
correct.
individual time is really important as well. So, well, we're getting kind of close to the end of our hour, and
Yeah, wow.
we didn't talk a lot about the way of Orient. So let's talk about how you became an owner of this school, and what you're teaching, what you're doing, what's your
Sure.
mission in your
Yep.
school.
Okay. I'm just gonna kind of backlog the whole me and my wife and whatnot. But so after I meet my wife, being boyfriend and girlfriend, and we started going to high school together, and she's like, let's start going back to karate, and it was
Hmm.
actually her idea on this. So I'm like, all right, so here I am wrestling. I'm done playing football. I'm wrestling, and I started doing martial arts at the same time. And I'm like, man, I really enjoy this. And it's been, I don't know, three years since I've probably last trained and hopped on the mat, and you know, it was just like a wow. This is the best. I'm older. I'm a teenager now. I'm like 15, 16. I'm a lot stronger.
Hmm.
A young adult, maybe if you want to say that, or a teenager. And I just picked it up again, and my brain was even bigger. It was more of a sponge. So when I was learning joint locks, throws, falls, it made sense instead of learning at the ages 7, 8, 9, where things wouldn't connect. Everything was connecting now,
Hmm.
and so long story short, I was wrestling this one match, and I sprawled wrong, and I instead of sprawling on the balls of my foot, I sprawled on like the instep, not the instep, the heel and the ball of my foot. So my knee popped, and that actually kind of took me out of wrestling. And luckily, martial arts is, if something doesn't work, you can still train. If you're in a sling, you can still train. So I just had a
Tell
bad
me
knee. I
about
had
it.
to wear a lot of knee braces. Exactly. So I spent the remaining years training martial arts. And long story short, I had an opportunity to teach at the YMCA at a very young age. Hey, Daniel, nice for you to join in. So, but yeah, I started teaching at the YMCA. I had a little off-school program and started getting kids from the YMCA down a way of Orient martial arts. Years went by. I actually managed the Carpinteria School, which is now known as Way of the Warrior Martial Arts with Jesse Ruiz. He's under me now. But yeah. I was doing all these classes. I was teaching Ventura. I was running the Carpinteria School. I was just trying to finish up a few of the YMCA classes, and at the same time, I was going to college full time. I got my my AS degree in criminal justice, and then I got picked up with law enforcement. When I got picked up with law enforcement, I was all in for martial arts. It's like martial arts took a big halt for about 5 years. I started as a police cadet, writing citations, towing cars, getting to know the ins and outs of the department and different procedures, penal codes. I mean, you name it. I got hired into more of a full-time position as a senior or police service officer. But I was wanting a very physical job. And unfortunately, when I was working law enforcement, it was the quite opposite. I was sitting on my butt, report writing, lots of note taking, and a lot of, again, being on your butt in front of a computer. Doing some of the jobs I did was registering sex offenders, which was freaking disgusting. And I hated that part of my job, registering narcotic offenders, taking police reports. Again, getting to really know a lot of the ins and outs. Some of the sergeants and lieutenants, assistant chiefs knew that I had a martial art background. It's kind of how they found me. Again, I know we can be on here and talk forever, but I started assisting the Ventura Police Department with their Koga training. So after anyone who graduates from the Ventura or the Police Academy in Camarillo, they would, get hired with Ventura PD as a trainee officer, and then they would have to learn arrest procedures and basic tactics and whatnot. And they were just very simple to me. And so I was always used to help out with that program, like a lot of basic strikes, baton strikes, joint locks, all that stuff. So I really enjoyed doing that. And I was hoping that somehow, some way I could get picked up doing that full time, just being the martial art instructor for law enforcement. But
right.
In 2012, they started having cutbacks. People started being placed on like work furloughs, and they just stopped hiring, period. And so, long story short, I got the opportunity. Someone called, and it was great Grand Master Yi was saying, "Hey, someone's selling the Ventura studio. You want in?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I don't have this much money. Blah blah blah." So Jenna was like, "Hey, this is your dream. This is your calling." Because I only thought rich people could own a business, smart people, all these thoughts that, I could never own a business. My wife's like, "No, I believe in you. I trust you. You're amazing at what you do." And she ended up taking a lot of money some of it out of my retirement account, but a lot of it came out of hers because she's been with Ventura PD for so many years. And so we ended up buying the studio and taking it over.
So what year was that?
Yes, and that was in 2000. Stay with me. 2014. And the school's been always doing so great. At one time, before I owned it, had over like 150 students with the previous owners. And then later on, I know the gentleman who currently last owned it, he was also working a full-time job. He was getting older. He was, maybe getting tired, and he looked to sell the studio. And we ended up taking it over. And one of the things was, we only had about 7 students at the time when I bought the studio. So, what happens when you have a new instructor walk in? No one knows who I am. Most of them all quit. Say hello, Brittany. It's an in-service day at school, thank God. So, so yeah, I only had like 10 students at the time, but then half of them quit. The only ones that stick around were like the second red belts or the PUMS belt, half red, half black belts.
Right.
And they had no clue with, who I was and whatnot. And slowly, surely, just leading with my heart, I slowly started gaining students, but there was a lot of times, Jason, where I wanted to sell the business because I'm like, I only have 8 students. I only have 10 students.
Right.
And then, it was hard. It was just like, I don't know anything about business. I don't know anything about behind the mat stuff. But again, I'm a believer in God. I'm a Christian. And so I prayed all the time, like, and I've always prayed, I want a martial arts studio. I want it to be successful. And, God got me to this point. I just prayed and prayed and prayed and never gave up. And here we go with giving up. But again, there was so many times I just wanted to sell it and be done because I didn't know what to do. I wasn't making any money, but everyone said, hang in there, stay with it, stay with it. And
Right.
slowly and surely, I started doing tournaments. My kids started doing good. Well, not my children, but like my students. They started winning first place at all these different little tournaments all around. And I started doing a little advertising slowly and surely. And then, people step in, try it, and love it. And I really believe in a word of mouth is the best advertisement. And now today, I'm not bragging, but we have a very, very, very busy school where it's hard for me to keep up, but I do. I always need more instructors. I need more than one on the floor if possible. We have all kinds of programs. I mean, first we only had Taekwondo and Hapkido, but I own a lot of the success of the business to Mr. Cox because within a year I called Mr. Cox. I'm like, hey, you remember me? And, I own a martial arts school and I don't know what I'm doing. And, he's like, hey, I want you to come in and see me.
Right.
And so I drove and saw him and, I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I don't know what I'm doing. And, he's like, oh, what are you teaching? And, I told him what I'm teaching. He's like, do you want to learn something else? I said, absolutely. And, this is when right around early 2015, he's all, well, just come and start doing privates with me. And we started doing Krav. And I fell in love with Krav immediately. I'm like, where have you been all my life? And because it's real self-defense instead of not knocking what we are taught at in traditional martial arts, but it was very explosive, short, sweet, to the point, made a lot of sense, and I fell in love with it. So with taking, his information and whatnot, being in, doing Krav and whatnot, I met people like you, Brand. I know Brand Kemmer since I was a little kid, but I was able to meet and hang out with Brandon Kemmer again, be associated with the AKMF. All these awesome people, like-minded people, good people, awesome, amazing family people. I mean, business-minded people, and you become who you hang out with. And so I believe, like, if you and I are hanging out, having lunch together, I'm totally picking your brain. I always tell you, hey, Jay, what are you doing with this? Or how can I make this better? And I owe it to all of you guys, all my training partners. And, I'm very blessed to be where I'm at today. So just say hi, Brittany. Just say hi.
Hi, Brittany. Hi. So the addition of Krav Maga to your program, really changed it because it added a whole new facet. It was a huge supplement to what you were already teaching. And then, of course, you've recently also introduced and brought in your jiu-jitsu program, and that program is growing. So you've got a lot of plates that you're juggling, a lot of things going on all at once. The school is growing, getting better. I'm really happy to hear that that starting from the bottom and working your way up, right? Like, to me, that's just a great story to tell. And the fact that you had doubt, I mean, all of us have had it. If you've been in business for yourself, you're like, am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? And you mentioned you had people there to support you and keep going, keep pushing, and then you have people that help lift you up. And I just think that that's so cool to see that and I look forward to what you do next. So let's keep this thing going. We got a big test coming up
Yes, yes,
at
we
the
do,
beginning
man.
of next year, so I'm excited for that.
Yes.
But listen, guys, thank you for watching. Still a bunch of people watching. If you have any last second questions, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, maybe you can share this video and people can catch the replay. We got a lot of interviews coming up, a couple more this week, and then every Monday here on Master Motivation. Go check it out. Subscribe to the channel and join our Facebook group. A lot of great leaders in that group that you'll hear from and see from. Mr. Cox, Dave Kovar, Kevin Kowalczyk. We have people dropping just diet tips and exercise tips and just anything that we can help each other to continue to grow. So I'm excited to have everybody a part of that. But Robbie, thanks for being a guest on the show and jumping in kind of last minute. Appreciate you.
Yes. No. Jason, thank you for again having me, and it was a blast talking to you. And yeah, I look forward to. I honestly don't want to say I look forward to the second degree black belt test, but I do.
Of course we do.
Yeah,
Of course we do.
right? I mean, it's a win. Well,
it's a love-hate relationship.
I guess it really
love-hate,
is, man. Right. So,
all right,
all
guys.
right.
Well,
Well,
listen.
thank you, everyone, and yeah, I really appreciate your time, Jason. And I'll see you soon, buddy.
Sounds good. All right, guys. We'll
Yeah,
see
man,
you
take it
next
easy.
time, and keep following Master Motivation. Have a great week.